Pokemon. Gotta catch them all, or more accurately, about half of them. Even Game Freak has realized at this point that there are just way too many Pokemon to reasonably expect somebody to catch all of them. In 2016, they finally dropped the old slogan, and in 2019, they dropped 50% of the Pokédex. From the very first games over 20 years ago, one of the main catches of Pokemon has been working together with your friends to complete the Pokédex by trading version exclusives. But, as with everything, the more hardcore portion of the community has a tendency to play games slightly differently than the way Game Freak had in mind. Nothing is a better example of this than my experience completing the Pokédex in Pokémon Sun and Moon, and later again in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. In total, I completed the Alola Pokédex 3 separate times, and all 3 times my experience was largely the same. Most of the time was spent either in the GTS or breeding Goomies to feed to the GTS. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually enjoyed completing the Pokédex in Generation 7, but it was mostly just seen as a chore, something I needed to do to get the Shiny Charm, not particularly something I wanted to do of my own accord. The GTS really just removed the need to worry about version exclusives, or really about catching anything on your own. And since none of my friends got Sun or Moon at launch, this was pretty much the entirety of my Pokédex experience for Generation 7. Fast forward to Generation 8. For the first time ever, all of my friends actually planned to get the latest games at or near launch. Since all of my friends were getting Shield, I decided to get Sword and hold off on picking up the second versions for a while. You see, Generation 8 made several changes that seem meant to encourage players to play the game the proper way. For one, they did away with the GTS, forcing you to set up one-on-one trades. I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I don't like the idea of them removing features in newer games. I mean, that's like the exact opposite of how that's supposed to work. But on the other hand, I think it kind of had a positive effect, forcing you to actually find Pokemon yourself, instead of just buying them on Craigslist. And catching your own Pokemon in this game is much more viable than it used to be. The introduction of experience candies allows you to easily evolve Pokemon rather than having to grind for 6 hours for one Dex entry. But that doesn't even matter because with the introduction of the wild area, you can catch pretty much every Pokemon in the game, including full evolutions. If you were to try to manually complete the Pokédex without the use of the GTS in Generation 7, it's likely that the majority of your experience would be dedicated to catching only a fraction of the available Pokemon, with the rest of the time spent either breeding or grinding to evolve certain Pokemon. In Sword and Shield, this simply isn't the case. Lots of people play Pokemon for lots of different reasons. Some people enjoy battling, some people enjoy exploring. I bet there's even a few maniacs out there who claim to play Pokemon for the story. But me, my favorite part of playing through a new game is going onto each route and spending way more time than I like to admit, hunting down and catching every Pokemon I can find. I'm a pretty big fan of the wild area. With all the rare Pokemon attainable here and the constant changing weather, I felt like I was constantly finding new stuff to catch, even after I had completed the majority of the Pokédex. Of course, you still have to breed and evolve some Pokemon, but honestly, I really think that served to keep the whole process fresh. Okay, I need something to be mad about. That's kind of my whole thing. Alright, I got it. So this generation's gimmick is raid battles, right? Where you team up with 3 other trainers to take down one massive Dynamax Pokemon. These battles are really fun in my opinion. Except for one problem. The other trainers. Never have a more incompetent group of individuals ever been assembled in all of history. They don't attack. They never attack. They just spam stat-changing moves, which wouldn't be as big a deal if Dynamax Pokemon couldn't reset all stat-changing moves at any time. And you're probably thinking, oh, Pig King, that's because you're playing with the NPCs. You need to play with people online. You think I don't know that? I tried! The online doesn't work. Straight up, the paid online service just straight up does not work. It's a miracle if I can get into a battle with even one real person. The Dynamax battles are great, especially if you're playing locally with your friends, but the NPCs are atrocious and the paid online service is completely broken. Honestly, I wish there was an option to take on the battles solo, but at the end of the day, the battles aren't that hard. Hopefully one day the online service will be fixed, but don't get your hopes up. As for playing together with friends, honestly, it's so much fun. Helping each other collect and trade version exclusives and rare Pokemon is just an awesome experience all around. I seriously recommend that you complete the Pokédex in Pokémon Sword and Shield if you haven't already. It's a really fulfilling experience. But if you aren't interested in completing the Pokédex just for fun, you should still do it just to get the shiny charm, which is definitely worth it if you plan on doing any measure of shiny hunting. So let's say all your friends are broke, or maybe you're a lonely person and you don't have any friends. What do you do about all these version exclusives? After all, it's not nearly as practical to own 2 Switches as it is to own 2 3DSs. Well, look no further than r/Pokemon Trades, a subreddit dedicated to trading Pokemon. R/Pokemon Trades can be useful for sure, but at this point it's mostly filled with people looking for foreign Dittos and 6 IV Pokemon, which means you usually have to make your own post looking for a trade. This wouldn't be a problem if you weren't limited to 1 post every 6 hours. This, in turn, usually just results in posts requesting half the Pokemon in the Pokédex in exchange for the other half, and absolute chaos in the comment sections. Personally, I prefer the r/Pokemon Sword and Shield Discord server. They have a text channel specifically dedicated to Pokédex completion, and you can make a post every 3 minutes as opposed to 6 hours. I think completing the Pokédex in Pokémon Sword and Shield strikes a fine balance between being a rewarding experience on its own and not being too difficult or annoying for people who just want the shiny charm. It's just a shame that so many Pokemon didn't make it into Gen 8. Game Freak, we don't need a game every year. Please, please take a year off and then hit us with those sweet, sweet Gen 4 remakes. So I really don't like making end cards, but I have to at the end of every video so the recommended and subscription buttons don't take up half the video. But you know, liking the video and subscribing to the channel are free, and so is checking out my social media or any of my other videos on the channel, all of which are linked in the description below. You know, it's a nice thing to do. It would make me very happy. And, you know, ring the bell to be notified of future uploads one day 6 years from now.